point, which I'll return to several times, is that if American democracy succumbs to authoritarianism, it will be because too many people in positions of great power, especially the Republican senators of the United States Senate, refuse to use readily available checks and balances in the United States Constitution that could have prevented Trump from defying the rule of law, dismissing economic common sense, rejecting the findings of modern science, dismissing the remarkable accomplishments of 8 decades of all in all, with blemishes, all in all successful American global leadership. So I'm going to summarize the first 100 days. I can leave out some things because Ben covered it so well. Following the Reichstag fire and the issuing of the decree for the protection of the people in the state, that decree suspended all the personal liberties that were guaranteed by the Constitution of the Weimar Republic, including freedom of speech, association, and the press. Nazism was a counter-revolution. It's important to remember. It destroyed an existing constitutional order. By April of 1933, the state of Prussia alone had arrested 25,000 people, mostly communists, taken into something called protective custody, which eliminated habeas corpus and normal legal guarantees. On March 22nd, 1933, the first Nazi concentration camp was established north of Munich in the small town of Dachau, where it held communists, socialists, and Jews. And as Benjamin pointed out, the suspension of the Constitution was justified on the basis of an alleged emergency following the fire. When the Reichstag passed the Enabling Act, that amounted to a parliamentary institution abandoning its own power. It was an act of self-destruction and self-immolation. Only the members of the Social Democratic Party voted against it. The communists had been previously excluded. Their leaders were under arrest or had fled. The Reichstag conferred full legislative and executive power on Hitler. In effect, it dissolved itself, and Hitler assumed the unified powers of the executive and the legislature. Benjamin mentioned the law for the restoration of the professional civil service. It's defined, the English translation is sometimes differs. It purged leftists, liberals, conservatives suspected of opposing Hitler, and all Jews from universities. Jews were purged from their positions as judges, public prosecutors, and district attorneys. And overwhelmingly, the remaining judicial elites cooperated with the order. Jews were expelled from the medical profession as well. By July of 1933, the Social Democratic Party was suppressed, and the leaders of both parties of the left were either in prison underground or had fled into exile abroad. By then, by July, the remaining political parties, the non-Nazi parties, dissolved themselves as well, and Germany had become a one-party state within 5 months. In July of 1933, we're going past 100 days here, the Berliner Tageblatt, the flagship of German liberalism, Germany's New York Times, succumbed to Gleichschaltung, or forced sale and takeover by the Nazis. On October 4th of 1933, the Editorial Control Act formulated by the Reich Press Office placed all remaining newspapers and periodicals under government control, thereby ending any pretense of freedom of the press. Editors had to be, quote, Aryan, and could not be married to a non-Aryan, that is, to Jews. Jews were thus banned from journalism. All editors were required to join the Reich League of the German press. The law established courts that could punish and purge editors deemed to have violated the law's requirements. So as terrible as the first months of the Trumpian authoritarianism have been, and they are terrible, they are not comparable to the first months of Nazism. Here are some of the differences. And excuse me if some of this is too obvious to this sophisticated audience. The Constitution of the United States today remains the law of the land. The Congress of the United States has not dissolved itself. A purge of the universities comparable to the law for the restoration of professional service has not taken place. Given that racism and policy towards African Americans has the centrality in American history that anti-Semitism had in Germany in 1933, a comparison to the Nazi era would require that the government purge African Americans of all public universities. has not taken
Give them
place.
time.
There's an argument to be had about the value of DEI programs. I reject government cutting government funding to the universities and the National Institute of Health in order to end DEI programs, but that falls far short of the law for the restoration of the professional civil servants. The Democratic Party continues to exist. Its leaders are not in prison or forced to flee.
Yet.
The defeat of conservative in elections for the position of Supreme Court in Wisconsin, the persistent criticism of Trump in the press from Democratic political leaders, street demonstrations, as Benjamin noted, all testify to the continued existence of rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Those rights are not applying to everyone, and we should definitely talk about that in discussion. No politician has been jailed by the government for his or her political views.
Yet.
Cory Booker spoke for 24 hours, something inconceivable in a Reichstag filled with thugs from the SA. The New York
He is
Times,
a national
the
hero,
Washington Post,
a national
NPR,
treasure.
the Wall Street Journal, the major news networks,
among
CNN
so many
and
others.
MSNBC all exist and offer criticism of the Trump administration. Some pull their punches more than others, but none have been taken over by the government. American journalists are not required to belong to a government-controlled association, nor are they compelled to divorce their spouses if they happen to be Jews or blacks or Hispanics or immigrants, as was the case with Jews in fall of '33 in Nazi Germany. The free press continues to exist. In Nazi Germany, a brave journalist such as Jeffrey Goldberg would likely already have been arrested for reporting on loose talk by Nazi army ministers. Then there is the very different and perplexing difference regarding anti-Semitism. Hatred of Judaism and the Jews was at the core of Nazi ideology. Despite Trump's penchant for conspiracy theories with anti-Semitic overtones, attacks on Jews is not central to his political appeal. His threat to blame American Jews who vote for Democrats should he have lost the 2024 election was a clear anti-Semitic threat, and his America First foreign policy could, at any moment, turn into one of abandonment of Israel should it be an irritant to his interests. The anti-Semitic dimension of Trumpism stems from the conspiracy of the Great Replacement, which blames Jews for increased immigration and the advance of black people in this country. The centrality of attacks on immigrants thus easily becomes hatred of the Jews, as was tragically evident in the attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Yet I state the obvious. The core ideological passion was hatred of Judaism, the Jews, and then also the Zionist project. Everything else was secondary. And despite the good people on both sides' comments about Charlottesville, Trump himself is not the raving anti-Semite that Hitler was.
Nobody is raving.
Another similarity between '33 and today concerns the relationship between the Nazis and the conservatives then, and the Republican senators and Trump in the past year.
He is a perfect
and it
patsy.
is a history of both times of cowardice, appeasement, underestimation, and agreement. In my essay, We Are Uncomfortably Close to 1933 in Persuasion, American Purpose, and in March, I noted that in spring of 2024, 31 Republican senators voted in favor of $60 billion of military assistance to Ukraine. Those senators included McConnell, Cornyn, Thune, Langford, Grassley, Wicker, and other conservative stalwarts. And McConnell was particularly passionate and eloquent about the danger of appeasing Russian aggression. And he affirmed the leading role of the United States in defense of democracies around the world. And 30 of his colleagues agreed with him 12 months ago. A year ago, only 15 Republican senators, including Senator Marco Rubio, voted against aid to Ukraine.
Imagine that.
Rubio's no vote likely caught Trump's attention, and is probably one reason that he is now the Secretary of State.
Another fucking traitor.
Since January 20th, those 31 Republican senators have refused to use their power to reject the nominations of Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Robert Kennedy Jr. Only 4 of their votes were needed in these cases to do so. The Gabbard nomination to be Director of National Intelligence was particularly egregious, as her support for an America First policy, her refusal to clearly describe Russia as the aggressor in Ukraine, or repudiate Edward Snowden, would have made her a security risk in normal times, not the Director of National Intelligence. When GOP senators voted to confirm her, Trump learned early in his term that he did not face opposition from them, that he would be free to abandon Ukraine if he chose to do so, and he could take a sledgehammer to 80
I'm all for
years of
Trump on the
American
front
global
lines of the
leadership.
Ukraine war.
If what Trump calls a
Trump to the
lunatic
front
Marxist
lines to show
radical
what a
is
hero
trying
he
to,
is.
quote, smash U.S. imperialism, undermine U.S. position around the world, erode our alliances, and benefit Russia and China, he or she could not do much better than placing Gobbard in this sensitive position. The GOP senators did not dissolve the Senate, but they did refuse to use their power to check Trump's bad judgment. Now, we don't know why the senators did that.
Sure we
We
do.
don't know what element of agreement with Trump, short-term cynical political
Like
considerations
Putin against
were,
Trump.
and we don't know
Trump against
how much
anybody else who gets in his
fear
way.
was involved. We know that Senator Lisa Murkowski this week said, "I am afraid. I am
Oh, but in
afraid."
the past she said maybe he learned his lesson.
What is Senator Murkowski afraid of? I don't think she would have said, "I am afraid," if she was afraid of facing a Trumpist candidate in a primary. To say that in public suggests that she is afraid because she has been receiving death threats, and her family has been receiving
Imagine
death threats.
that.
If there are journalists listening to this video, I hope that they will ask Senator Murkowski and all of the Republican senators and all of the senators and the Congress people, are they receiving death threats, and from whom? And that they then contact Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and say, it's your responsibility to see that violence has no place in this country and American politics.
Sure it
and
does.
we want protection. We want you to find out who is threatening us, if that is what is taking place.
Yeah. Who do you think's
We
responsible?
don't know that, and we need to know that. So it's the willingness of elected representatives to abandon their prerogatives in the face of invented emergencies and a more authoritarian leader with a base of loyal and violent supporters that is the similarity that I want to emphasize.
Bring on the trials.
In Germany in 1933, and vastly less so in the United States today, there were no problems, however serious, that could not have been addressed through the normal functioning of representative democracy. The inclination to describe problems as emergencies, as Sidney has pointed out and Ben has pointed out, and thus to justify a huge expansion of executive power that Carl Schmitt justified and legitimated, came at the expense of the legislature. That is a common experience in both episodes. But in both cases, it was the failure of contemporaries to use the power at their disposal, that paved the path to dictatorship and then authoritarianism now. The instruments of check and balance in the United States are vastly more intact than they were in Germany in 1933. Just two more paragraphs. There is another, and perhaps too obvious, factor that combines assessment of Germany then and the United States today. And that factor is what I'm going to call the rest of the world. Hitler was able to establish a totalitarian dictatorship in Germany and conquer the medium and small states of Europe. Then he went to war with Britain, invaded the Soviet Union, and declared war on the United States. Reality intruded. Trump has captured the Republican Party in the White House. He has not captured China, the European Union, Japan, and for that matter, Canada and Greenland. Reality will intrude here as well. The question for us now is how much devastation of our economy, the rule of law, our universities, our health, and the Constitution will be shredded before reality intrudes. Screaming that we live under tyranny, that Trump is like Hitler, that dictatorship has arrived, will spur some to action, but it will spur most others to fear and failure, to use the freedoms we have to defend our democracy.
The public is
Thinking
heavily
responsibly, as
and
Benjamin
well
asked,
armed.
about similarities and differences between our time in Germany in the early 30s is one modest but essential contribution
What will it
that
take?
we historians can make to our
How much
current
longer will we
discussion
put up with this
of
shit?
the court of history. Thank you.
Thank you.